Hey guys, welcome to Conceptual Geometry, Unit 8, Day 3, Finding the Missing Angle. Before we get to finding missing angles, we are going to do a quick warm-up. Find the value of x to the nearest tenth. So let's start this in the triangle. I have that angle of 32 degrees, so the first thing I need to do is identify the other two sides. Well, if you remember, the two sides that make up the angle are always adjacent and hypotenuse. In this case, the 27 is hypotenuse and x is the adjacent. Let's take a quick second to review our three trig functions. We're going to need those today anyway. So down below a little bit, sine of the angle is equal to the opposite side over the hypotenuse. Cosine of the angle is equal to the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And tangent of the angle is equal to the opposite side over the adjacent side. So in the example up above, I'm given adjacent and hypotenuse, so that is clearly cosine. Cosine of the angle, in this case 32 degrees, equals the adjacent side, which is x, over the hypotenuse, 27. So we have two types of equations that we've learned to solve so far. One of them is when x is on the top, one of them is when x is on the bottom. The rhyme for when x is up high, multiply. So I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by 27. That cancels here, and it'll just give me an x. And now I'll use my calculator. Just a quick reminder, make sure you go to mode, especially if you're borrowing a calculator, and put it in degree mode if it isn't already. So now I know my calculator's in degree mode. All I have to do is type in 27 cosine 32 and hit enter. It says round to nearest tenth, 22.9. All right, so what we are going to do today is a little bit more challenging. We are going to find a missing angle. Now, I'll show you how to do this when we get to the equation, but it's illustrated right here. How to get the angle. We have to use a second button on the calculator. You type in the fraction, and then you hit enter. All right, so let's take a look at one of these. Example 1, find the value of x to the nearest degree. For the first time, our variable is the angle. So I don't know what that angle is. But I can determine the two sides that are given to me. They make up the angle. It's always adjacent. In this case, the adjacent is 11 and hypotenuse. So I need to use cosine, just like I did up above. Cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse. The difference is I don't know the angle, so I have to put in the x. It's cosine x equals, and then your fraction is 11 over 16. That's the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So here's what we were talking about in this box. How do you undo the cosine? You type in second, then the trig function, type in the fraction, then hit enter. But why do we do that? Because I need to get the x by itself. So I have to undo the cosine. Well, you can't divide by cosine. It doesn't work that way. So you have to take what's called the inverse. So I'm going to take the inverse cosine of both sides. Because the inverse cosine and the cosine cancel out, that just gives me an x. Now, let's see what we do on the calculator. This is why we have to hit the second button, because up above cosine is cosine negative 1. Now notice the difference between this and what we just did up above. You see that little negative 1. Now I put in that fraction, 11 divided by 16. And when I hit enter, it's going to give me an angle. Find the value of x to the nearest degree. So that means no decimal places. It's 46.56, so that will round up to 47 degrees. So that's brand new. That's probably the most complicated thing that we'll do in this unit. Finding that missing angle. All right, example 2. Find the value of x to the nearest degree. So look at where the x is. Look at what two sides we have. So across is opposite. Opposite is 2. And the hypotenuse is 3. Opposite hypotenuse. If you look up above, that's sine. So my equation is sine of x equals 2 over 3. Now, once you understand this solution process, it's pretty simple. You do the same thing every single time. you just take the inverse of whatever trig function you have. And in this case, the inverse sine and the sine cancel and just leave us an x. In my calculator now, for this example, I would type in second sine, because that gives me the inverse sine, or sine -1, and then just type in your fraction, 2 divided by 3. All right, probably should be closing these parentheses, but if it's the last thing you do, it doesn't really matter. 41.8 rounded to the nearest degree is 42 degrees. Now we're finding angles here, so notice I put a degree symbol for each one. Make sure you put that in there, please. All right, next few examples. Find the value of x to the nearest degree. All right, so identify the angle. That's where it is. Identify the sides that are given to you. The 2 is the opposite, and 18 is the adjacent. So opposite and adjacent, that's tangent. Tangent of x, don't forget the x, equals 2 over 18. And then what we do is we take the inverse tangent of both sides. The inverse tangent cancels with the tangent on that side. Make sure you're writing this out, please. And x equals, let's see what we get on the calculator. Second tangent. So I see tangent -1, exactly what's written in your paper. 2 divided by 18. 6.3, it says nearest degree, so let's call it 6 degrees. Example 4, find the value of x to the nearest tenth of a degree. So they want us to be a little bit more accurate here, nearest tenth of a degree. Locate your angle and then identify the two sides. So across from the angle is opposite, 5 is the opposite, and 13 is the longest side, that's hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So sine of x equals 5 over 13. To get the x by itself, in this case, I need to use inverse sine. Inverse sine and sine cancel. It leaves me the x. And let's see what we get on the calculator. I'll clear this. Second sine, you see the sine -1, 5 divided by 13. Hit enter. 22.61, so the 1 will leave the 6 alone. It's 22.6. And don't forget, it's an angle, so I need degrees. Now, if you guys were in class, we would make up our own problem here and have somebody come up to the board, but obviously you're not, so I'll just make one up. Put an x there. That's 11, and this is 18. So think about how you would set this up. Okay, so here's my angle. The 11 is across from that angle, so this is the opposite side. And the 18 is the adjacent side. Opposite and adjacent is tangent. Tangent x equals 11 over 18, because that's the opposite over the adjacent. Now, to solve this, I need to take the inverse tangent, which you would write out. It has to go in front of the fraction, which cancels out there. That gives me x equals whatever I get in the calculator when I do second tangent, 11 divided by 18. 31.42, and it says nearest degree, so in this particular example, that would be 31 degrees. All right, guys, that concludes lesson 8.3. Thanks a lot for watching, and let me know if you guys have any questions. Have a great day.